Hey everyone, welcome to Revenue Renegades. I'm very excited to welcome this week Alexa Grabell, the CEO and founder of Pocus. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm ready to go with my own coffee to
Oh,
chat
excellent.
coffee.
Fantastic. I love it. As a founder myself, I always love starting with your founding story. So tell me, what was the aha moment that unlocked Pocus for you?
I love it. So prior to founding Pocus, I was actually in sales ops. So I was early sales op employee at a company called Data Miner, and we were just building it out. And the thing that I was really struggling with was cobbling together a million different tools to help sales rep have full intelligence on their accounts and the actual people in their book of business. And so what happened was I was taking data from Salesforce and Looker and ZoomInfo and Sixsense and all these tools and trying to hack it together. And I was thinking to myself, why is this so complicated? And then fast forward, I actually went back to school at Stanford where I met my co-founder. And there we founded Pocus with the vision of supercharging sales teams and being hyper focused on how do we build something that helps sellers sell and not spend so much time switching between a million different tools. And so really we started as a product-led sales platform because we found a very specific niche in that broader vision of, hey, it's really hard for customers at PLG businesses to get access to product usage data to use as an intent signal. After that, our customers started saying, hey, can you get this signal and this piece of intent and this type of information, which then expanded our offering a ton to really help with all types of research and prospecting. So that is the full journey in a minute or less.
I love it. I love it. One of the things I think I read is in the early days of Pocus, you and your co-founder conducted something crazy, like 350 interviews. Did I get that right?
We were nuts.
Yeah, nuts. So, tell me a little bit about, what did you discover about the customer discovery process? Like, what
Hmm.
worked best and what didn't work, and what were some of the kind of the most surprising insights from those conversations?
Oh, I love that question. So we took a class at Stanford called Lean Launchpad, which very similar to the method of YC or those types of incubation methods where you have series of hypotheses that you test over a short amount of time, and by the end hoping to come out with end goal would be come out with an idea of a company that customers and market really validates. And what we ended up doing, really following this lean startup methodology, was testing series of ideas or hypotheses of types of businesses in the broader sales ops space that we think could be massive and we're really tapping on a need. And what we learned from that is it could be really easy to have happy ears. And what I mean by that is if you're very excited by an idea, you're going to go into meetings with bias and potentially leading questions of, here's what we're doing. Does this sound exciting? Like, obviously, the person on the other end is going to say yes. And so you need to think through ways to almost try to find every gap to your business. Like, go in a little bit more open-minded and almost pessimistic of why won't this work, and tell me, and asking much broader questions. So instead of going right into your solution, we started with things like, what are the top 3 things that keep you up at night? And if one of those top 3 things weren't the idea that we were focused on that week, that's very validating rather than saying, hey, do you find this idea interesting?
Interesting. I love the idea of just starting with the pain points. So let's say you one of their top 3 pain points happens to overlap with the hypothesis you're testing that week. Where do you go from there?
You start asking a lot of questions. How do you solve this today? What tools are you using? What is the actual impact of this pain today? Why haven't you solved it already? Who's focused on this? And you keep trying to get to the bottom of it. And you want to figure out, is this something that is a burning problem that if they don't solve it immediately, things in the business will really hurt? Or is this something that's just a problem, but it's not going to be solvable this quarter or next quarter, and things will go on. So we really wanted to push and push and push into that and figure out, are they attempting to solve it? If not, why? Is it not that big of a problem? Or if yes, how? And could it be done better with an external solution versus whatever hacky thing they're doing internally?
Were you testing pricing at that time too?
We were testing pricing in the sense of willingness to pay,
Mhm.
not exactly how to price. And so what I mean by that is we wanted to make sure that if this problem were solved with the product that we build, people will spend a significant amount of dollars on this. We weren't testing like, should this be usage based, seat based? What is the price? Because the reality is, as your product matures, I don't know if you feel this and if I'm allowed to ask questions back to you, but
Sure.
pricing feels like it changes all the time in startup land, that it's impossible to get right. Even now, almost 4 years later, I feel like we're always iterating on it.
I was just at a Salesforce Ventures event down in Southern California, and one of the most heavily attended breakout sessions was around pricing. And it
Yeah.
was very interesting. It was like the gentleman from Salesforce was leading a lot of the thinking around their agent force pricing, which is obviously very different than traditional SaaS pricing in terms of kind of a $2 per case, or in some
Yeah.
cases a 50% thing. So there's all this variable things. There's a lot of unrest with the sales team about how does that translate into my commission check, right? And then sitting with him was a gentleman from another company that's doing kind of AI SDRs, qualified, I believe. And it was more just like, hey, listen, how do we think about this as a human replacement? Kind of so two totally different pricing, approaches that are different than traditional SaaS or traditional kind of enterprise software pricing.
Yeah, I mean, once you throw AI in there, it goes even crazier with the opportunities of what you have for pricing. I was even saying before the AI days, it's just there's
Oh
so
yeah.
many different permutations of what's possible.
Yeah. So one of the things I remember when Pocus launched, one is I think you did a brilliant job around the whole product-led sales category, and I think the other thing that was really impressive was what a great job your team did about building community. And I think you've got, I assume that community is continuing to thrive and grow. Can you tell a little bit about how you approach that and how you thought about building community?
Yes. So in the beginning, what we found with product led sales was there was a lot of noise and a lot of confusion,
Hmm.
which is now the same with AI in sales. You can probably building in that space. It's lots of noise, lots of confusion. And so what we found was, how can we help people not necessarily get access to a tool like Pocus, but help them answer questions that they're feeling right now in this world of what even is product-led sales? How do I do it? Should I be doing it? What is it? And so what started as just a 20-person Slack community of people, maybe early design partners or investors or people that were in my orbit through building, then it became, okay, can I invite my friend, my boss, my peer, my colleague that then moved to this other company, and it started organically growing because it was just a place for people to ask questions that wasn't in their current job. And then that's grown now. I think we have like 4,000 people in the Slack community, thousands more, which I would say in our LinkedIn community, to make sure that we can just have the dialogue that maybe you're not having internally, and you have places to go to ask questions that maybe you couldn't go internally. And so we really think about it as a place to educate on confusing and noisy topics versus trying to like force a product down someone's throat.
But obviously, a lot of those folks who discover you through that process are then curious about Pocus's offering. So I assume some of that is top of funnel as well.
For sure. I think it's more awareness. Like we'll
Mhm.
never go prospecting in our community,
Yeah.
but people know about us from the community. And then that of course helps when you have great brand recognition there in terms of when they're thinking about evaluations.
So tell me a little bit about how far were you into this journey on product-led sales when you're like, hey, this is bigger than this, right? Or, maybe this is the initial vision has got a cap to it, and we think there's actually even a bigger target to go after. So tell me a little bit about when did that happen and how did that realization start to come about?
So actually the bigger vision was always much, much, much bigger. Even when we raised our seed round, it wasn't so much like we're talking about product led sales today, but how we phrased it back then was there's siloed different systems of record and there needs to be a smart system of intelligence on top of those. And
Mhm.
so how that shows itself has evolved. So it started with product-led sales of you have a data warehouse and a CRM, and then there's a system on top to merge the two and unlock that data. Then what happened was our customers pulled us to say, hey, there's other data points and intent and information that I also want pulled into Pocus. And so that then you bring that in and you open up your market a ton to not just PLG businesses, but all B2B businesses, and not just tech companies, but all companies. And so for us, it was like we knew our vision, we knew the 2-year plan, the in-between was fuzzy at the time. And then that was kind of the learning pattern over the last couple of years.
So help me and the listeners then understand kind of how do you see yourselves fitting into the landscape? Because obviously there's, as you said, there's a ton of noise out
So
there,
many.
and everybody says they're doing everything. And I think that in the I'll call it the previous generation, although it's funny to talk about companies like Clarion, Gong, and Outreach as old
Previous.
school,
It
but
is now.
but it is now. Yeah, it is. But they kind of came with a similar approach, right? When I remember when I first got to Salesforce, and it was GM of Sales Cloud, talking to Mark and being like, there's a set of companies that are basically trying to relegate us to be a dumb database in the back end. And you should be
What'd
aware
he
of.
say?
He wasn't aware of any of them at the time, which was amazing. I mean, because these are all 100+ million companies at the time. It's just that, Mark's so focused on what's next, that he was
Huh.
not kind of aware of the changes that had happened in the sales ecosystem. But I mean, like, he gets it like that. He's like the most brilliant marketer. He and Steve Blank are probably the two of the best marketers I've ever had the experience, the pleasure of getting to know. But it was amazing to think about. A lot of companies who see this is like, hey, listen, there's an opportunity for a real engagement layer. So tell me a little bit about how do you think about the players? You mentioned folks like ZoomInfo earlier, but
Yeah.
where do you see Pocus fitting in?
So when you think about, let's use the word old school for a second, even though, I mean, ZoomInfo is more old school than those. But when you think about sales intelligence tools like ZoomInfo or Sixth Sense, where really the point was how do we unlock data for sellers and make it easy for them to figure out where to spend their time and where to focus. There is a whole new wave of possibilities that AI has unlocked for sales intelligence. And that's really where we play, of this new age AI sales intelligence tooling that can be much smarter AI in the sense of actually being intelligent, of AI that is constantly learning and getting smarter over time, and it can make its own decisions and recommendations, as well as being way more prescriptive. So what I've heard from some customers is ZoomInfo, it's like you throw a phone book at a sales rep and you assume they know what to do with it. Whereas with AI, you can be much more, you can give reps guidance of this is what you need to do today. So that's where we're focusing a ton. And if you boil that down to even simpler words, it would be research and prospecting. So how am I generating pipeline? And so it's a crazy time to be building because you can say this the same way, like these old school categories and pieces of go-to-market tech are just going to be completely rebuilt. And you and I are both probably believers that it's going to be a new player entering the space to do that, just because of how different architecting these systems are today versus what they did back then.
Yeah, we describe it. I use the phrase BC a lot of times, before ChatGPT, and I think that, and that was one of the founding premises of Coffee, frankly, because I think that we looked at the same thing. It was like, oh my God, the go-to-market stack is a shit show. It's way too many pieces, way too complicated, way too expensive, and all of these things were built. Even some of the newer CRMs, right, were built BC, right, and so you make very different design decisions if you imagine, hey, listen, this is mostly going to be about structured data, and this is about,
Yeah.
I don't have access to, LLMs are not a thing yet, right? Or that I imagine. So I do think that there's this generation of companies that started, on the other side of the launch of ChatGPT, have been able to take advantage of things, are early enough in that process to think about really taking advantage of doing things in a very different way. So do you think, is your audience more on the rep side or on the RevOps side?
Both. So reps are the users, RevOps are the admins,
Okay.
usually, and working all the way up to the CRO. Is it similar for you?
I mean, coffee. I mean, we're still early. We're onboarding design partners and doing all that. I think that we've got capabilities inside of coffee that we've shown to RevOps people that are very exciting. Like kind of a we call it Revenue GPT, although it turns out Clary's kind of got that trademark, so we won't call it that. But
Go for it. Who cares?
yeah,
We can
no, no,
claim
no.
it.
Andy and I have already had that chat. We've decided that's this podcast was originally going to be called Revenue GPT, and then I was like, then I invited Andy as a guest, and he was like, "You do realize we have Rev GPT?" I was like, "Revenue Renegades." That seems like a much better title.
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about RevGPT. What are you
Rev
talking about?
GPT. No, I don't know what you're talking about. But yeah, but like the idea of being able to ask, question. I mean, the basic questions. You're not. I mean, the thing about RevOps is, I think AI in general is going to allow people to do more high value tasks just across the board. And I think RevOps will be that as well. And so I think that there's a certain set of questions that managers will be able to go to coffee and ask that they would traditionally go to RevOps for. But RevOps is just going to be able to do more strategic things. We had a team at LinkedIn. I was totally spoiled. We had these amazing people in a team called BizOps. And they were basically, I call them business Siri, before there was ChatGPT. And it was, you could go in and be like, hey, listen, like I run Sales Navigator. What's the biggest white space for us? Is it like new logo accounts, or is it going deeper into existing accounts? And all these McKinsey and Bain guys would go off and do all this analysis and come back with this amazing, analysis. Or you could say like, what's the tipping point for us in a free trial period when somebody becomes a customer that's going to not churn later on? And they came up with this, engaged seller metric. And so like, that's the kind of stuff that I think that AI is not. I mean, maybe deep research will get there, quicker than I think, but I think that RevOps is going to have a lot of the busy work is going to get taken off their plate with a lot of these AI technologies. So
For sure.
yeah. So you were a first-time founder, correct?
Yes.
So tell me about that. You didn't have experience raising money. You've done an amazing job raising money. You didn't have, experience, kind of building out a team of this, cross-functional team like this. What have been some of the kind of lessons and obstacles you've come across?
Yes. It's, I can definitely see how it could be in the future easy doing it a second or third time again, because there's a huge learning curve. So when you're being a first-time founder, I was a first-time founder, but also a first-time CEO and a first-time manager. And so it's a lot to learn at once. I think the biggest thing is getting hiring right. It took me a lot of misses, but also just mishires or kind of hiring too slow, hiring too fast. Like there are just things. You can read whatever book, you can listen to whatever podcast. You cannot learn hiring until you do it and mess it up a bunch of times. And so for me, the things that really helped us, I think, get here was hiring a few of the awesome people that have still been with us since day one, really. Like a lot of people are hitting their 3 years and 4 years and continuing to do that. But of course, there were, when you're a founder and figuring out when's the right time to hire, who you should be hiring, and then how to evaluate talent to match that scorecard, it's super difficult.
Yeah, I think someone once told me, I wish I could give them the proper credit because I can't remember who it was, but told me the job of the CEO is MVP, and it does not stand for most valuable player. It stands for money, vision, and people.
Yeah.
And I often say it's almost like the reverse order for me. It's all, I mean, people give so much lip service to this, but like the most important thing is, do you have the right people on the bus, and do you get the wrong people off the bus quickly enough? And I think that's, like no one bats 1,000, right? No one, like, it's crazy to think that you're just going to always hire A players. And a lot of times you just don't know until you're into it. We actually do this hack I'll share here, where every new employee, we put a meeting on the calendar 90 days out.
Yeah.
And we tell them day one, we're like, welcome to the company. We're so happy you're here. And in 90 days, we're going to sit down and figure out whether it's working out for both of us. So not to freak you out, but like, that's because what I realized is everybody I ever had to say goodbye to, I knew within the first 90 days.
Within the first week sometimes. Like I feel like there's a lot of there's a lot of signals in the first week or couple of weeks. It usually doesn't take 90 days. I think the hard one is, and those 90 days, maybe it's not a C player, not an A player, but they're a B player, and
Yep.
you have that in the back of your head, like, do they have the slope? Do they have the chance to get to an A? And yes, with proper coaching and management, maybe, but in a startup, you usually don't have time for proper coaching and management. So
Yeah, the best test I think is Patty McCord from Netflix had this great, they had the great classic slide deck, and the book about this was kind of a keeper test, and this notion of like, if someone came to you tomorrow on your team and said, I'm leaving,
would you fight?
how hard would you fight to keep
Yeah.
them? And if the answer is I wouldn't like throw everything I could at them, first of all, if you'd throw money or title or stock or something like that to keep them, and you can afford to do that now, do it now, right? So they don't even think about looking. And the second is if you're like, well, like I wouldn't be that upset, you should be managing them out now.
Yes, that's a learning curve, I think, and every other founder will tell you that, like the fire fast, and you
Yeah.
don't get into the muscle until you do it a couple times, and then you realize you're doing the company. Actually, you're doing this for the people that are staying at the company. No one, A players don't want to work with B players.
Exactly. Exactly. So besides the people thing, if you could go back to kind of 2021 Alexa, right?
Yeah.
When you started Pocus, what advice would you give yourself about, kind of building a
Ooh.
category defining company?
One that's like more related tactically and one more kind of mentally. So I think I spent a lot of time in my brain of being scared of competition, having imposter syndrome, like what makes me able to do this. And I remember if you remember the product led sales space, there were like 20 plus players
Mhm.
and they had more VC funding. They've been doing it for a while, second time founders. And I remember just being super intimidated and like, what is my right to win? And it was a lot of mental drain that looking back was so unnecessary. Like I think to myself, what could I have done better if that was not clogging my brain? So I think there's a little bit of just one of our values at Pocus is being delusionally optimistic. And I wish I learned that earlier of just being like, fuck it. Like I'm building this company. It's going to be massive. Like whatever. Like no, like, and nothing, imposter syndrome does nothing. And I think after the first year, it kind of went away once I was able to raise money and win those big logos and saw that we could like build a better product than competitors. But that got in my way. So I wish I told myself not to think about that. The other stuff is like, I knew how to do nothing. Like, I didn't know how to run product or sales or marketing or like truly had no idea actually how to run any function. And I wish I looked for advisors earlier. I brought in advisors later in Pocus's journey, and it was very helpful in before you hire a leader to at least get the function somewhat functional. Like it's
Mhm.
good. Like I built things with first principles, but there's probably things that I could have skipped a couple steps if I actually didn't reinvent the wheel through first principles. I actually like saw this is how a marketing function runs and bringing in experts there.
Thank you for being vulnerable on that. I think that, by the way, the imposter syndrome never fully goes away. I realized in talking to, hundreds or thousands of people, and self included. I think that there is, it just, the scale changes, right? There's
For
different
sure.
pieces. You're like, after I've been doing this for a few decades, and I'm like, all right, I realize I suck at certain things, and I'm comfortable with sucking at those things
Yeah.
now. Right? And I realize I'm kind of okay or actually pretty good at certain things, and let me like focus on that. I think that the biggest challenge sometimes as a founder is how do you get outside that comfort zone? Like for
Yeah.
me, it's product. I could live in user interface design all day. I
Yeah.
could, and how do you kind of branch out of that? So like for me, even in coffee, doing, I'm like, okay, I guess I got to post on LinkedIn now, and just build a brand. And I'm finally having fun. Like, and the podcast now is fun, and the posting on LinkedIn has been fun. And so like, but like 6 months ago, I was like dreading all of this stuff, right?
Yeah. I think a bit just remembering that company building is so much more fun if you don't have
Mhm.
imposter syndrome, if you're not worrying. Like if I think too much about my LinkedIn, like maybe back then Alexa would have been like cringy about it. But now I'm like, whatever, just go. Don't think about it. No worries. Who cares?
And I think for me, it's like, kind of every day, like, did you move the ball a little? I'm terrible at sports analogies or, to follow them, but like, did you move the ball a little further down the field? Did you
Mhm.
like, did I have some win? And the thing that most people don't realize about founders, like my ex used to ask me, hey, how was your day? And I'm like, do you want the 10 a.m. version, the 1 p.m. version, or the 4 p.m. version? Because there's three totally different stories,
The
right?
roller coaster of a founder.
Yeah, and you realize that not a lot of people are cut out for having a kind of, steady heartbeat through, or mostly steady heartbeat through most of those roller coaster rides. And so, like my first company, I brought the executive. We were going through this crazy M&A process, and I brought them all into that loop. And just like I think some people just kind of like have PTSD from that, right? Because
Yeah,
the whiplash is crazy. So you have to understand how much you share.
yeah,
And I'm generally err on the side of oversharing with the team.
that's
Um,
fair.
but yeah, not everybody is built out for that roller coaster ride.
I'll say if you are someone, I've kind of just come to terms with the fact that I like to over communicate and overshare. And so my leadership team needs to be okay with some whiplash and the ride. And so I've become okay with that. And I've moved leadership team out that can't handle that. And I've hired people that thrive under that. And I think that's okay. Like, I think that you have to figure out who are the people that work well with your style because there's only, of course, I listen to feedback and try to iterate, but I am who I am. And so you have to find people that want to work with you.
Yeah, mine is like, the majority of your waking hours, especially as an entrepreneur, are going to be spent working. It's like life is too short to not have fun doing it, right? And
A
it's not
hundred
like every
percent.
moment is fun. I think I freaked out an investor recently because he was worried about like how long am I going to stay, and I was like, well, I'm going to stay until I stop having fun. And they looked at this like well, startups are not only fun. I'm like, yeah, they kind of are for me, right?
Yeah.
So.
I mean, if you're insane enough to be a founder, like you're having fun. Like
Yeah.
it might not be everyone's definition of fun.
Yeah, yeah, it's a different definition of fun. So let's go back to Pocus for a minute. I mean, you've got major brands, Asana, Monday, Miro, many others that are using your stuff now. Can you share some anecdotes for
Yeah.
kind of some of the value that you've seen those customers unlock with Pocus?
Yeah, I would say the two big levers are high quality pipeline and time savings efficiency.
Hmm.
So I'll give an example of Asana. We actually now we power all of their AEs, BDRs, and AMs,
Hmm.
and we generate up to 70% of their outbound pipeline through
Wow.
Pocus by tapping into our intent signals, surfacing the right leads at the right time, sending the right messages. And then more on the go-to-market efficiency side, Canva's a customer
Hmm.
across actually their full go-to-market org as well. We help their reps save through a survey on average 10 hours per rep per week. So we really try to focus on go-to-market efficiency as well as pipeline generated.
Can you double click on both of those? So, like in the Asana case, what are some of the signals that are most relevant for them?
Yeah. So I like to think about signals for really any customer in three different categories: cold outbound, warm outbound, and expansion.
Hmm.
And so when you group them in, we can start with expansion because that's really where our product started. Of how are existing users engaging with the product today to surface opportunities for expansion or cross sell. And expansion could be expansion of seats or new use cases, new teams. And so signals that we can show them is, hey, we've seen that an executive has been really active in your product, or we see that there's been multiple different workspaces spun up under the same domain, or we've seen that usage has spiked over the last 7 days, or that people are increasingly inviting team members more than average. So those are expansion signals.
Yeah.
Then warm outbound signals, I think about those of how can you go outbound to companies who know your brand but maybe aren't a customer yet. So that's like who's on your website, who's been a job switcher, who's engaging with your content, who's attended a webinar.
Hmm.
And then finally, cold outbound is how can you figure out ways that you can craft a compelling message to people that don't know who you are yet. So that you can grab things from recent news or 10Ks or publications or podcasts around really anything that is relevant. So for Asana, they're going to care about productivity and collaboration, whereas Canva might care more about design. And so you have to kind of figure out what those signals are that's right for you.
And when you talk about efficiency, like in the Canva case, are those the same kind of things that you're looking at with the Asana cases?
Yeah, I mean, different signals for each different type of person based on what's relevant for them. So at Pocus, something that we also focus on a lot is making sure that we have relevant signals. So I think what's happened a lot right now is there's just been signal and data overload. So
Yeah.
you're just throwing signals at reps and assuming they know what to do with it. We have something called a relevance agent that learns everything about our customers, so they surface only the most relevant signals and insights. And so what happens is instead of reps having to learn everything and have a million tabs open and they're just being bombarded with data, they can just figure out, here's a hot lead I need to focus on today. Here's why. Here's the people I need to go after. And here's the outbound I need to send. And so that goes from, 10 minutes to 30 seconds. And they're not distracted all day long by data being thrown at them.
Got it. And what is that like? I assume, as you said, every customer is slightly different than the other customer. What does that onboarding process look for you then for your team and the software to kind of understand this customer's needs and kind of tailor it to their needs?
Yep. So how it works is first to actually get started on Pocus, we just tell Pocus's agent, learn everything you can about Canva and their target accounts once we feed it that information. So it can start learning automatically everything external. So 10Ks, blog posts, websites, anything that it wants to learn online. Okay. Then we can hook up the CRM as well as the data warehouse. So we start feeding it information around your previously closed won or closed lost deals and what's in active pipeline right now, as well as usage data. How are folks engaging with your product today? Mm-hmm. After that's done, the AI has a good base understanding of what to surface, the point of view and account plans to create, and the outbound to send. But it also gets smarter with humans in the loop. So there's two ways of interacting, or two ways to actually make it smarter. First, we have go-to-market engineers on our team that will actually help our customers set it up and refine the AI. And then we also train their RevOps teams on how to edit playbooks, or we call them playbooks, but also edit playbooks as well as the different AI prompts.
That's fascinating. The AI piece of this, I think, I still feel like I'm in old school. Sometimes I'm like, okay, am I how do I break my old school thinking about this? Because so much of this is how do you kind of sick AI on doing certain tasks for you, and how do you think about this much more in like a natural language standpoint? So I love the idea of just like starting off with an agent that says, go figure out everything you can about this company, and then you can kind of add to that. But there's no need to have manual, input screens and forms and stuff like that for any of those pieces.
Yep, exactly. It's onboarding is something that can be way more streamlined and efficient now with AI for sure.
So just speaking of AI, I mean, how do you envision if you're a sales rep, if you want to give advice to a sales rep today? So, AI is obviously taking over a lot of these repetitive tasks. It's making the reps much more efficient. What skills should sales reps work on kind of building or honing?
So being more strategic and consultative. I think that what AI will replace first is more of the, like you said, the manual and tedious work, but also the transactional selling of just like ticket taker selling or SMB. I think what really will stick around is what you can learn from enterprise and mid-market sales, but can still apply in SMB. And what I mean by that is figuring out, okay, what does my prospect care about? How can I map our solution to their needs? How can I make this compelling? How can I feel like a thought partner? How can I make sure that I'm guiding them on the evaluation? So all of those skills, I don't see a world, at least in the next few years, where AI can do that better than a human.
And what do you think about, as we, again, talking about humans or replacing, augmenting / replacing certain human jobs? Everyone's talking about agents these days. Obviously, it's an agent force world, as Mark would tell you. What are your thoughts on agents, and how does that kind of fit into the Pocus roadmap? So
the first question of replace versus augment, we are the anti-AI SDR. Like, we fully believe in supercharging sellers, not replacing them. So everything for us is about how do we make sellers more effective and able to actually do more. Our whole product is built by agents. So we have series of knowledge agents that are scraping all this information. So we have one knowledge agent scraping 10Ks, one scraping company websites, one scraping podcasts, one scraping YouTube, anything that you want, custom agents. And then we also have this relevant agent I spoke about, which is custom for every single customer to actually learn everything about their business, to start making their own decisions and recommendations of what's a relevant insight, what's a relevant point of view, what's a relevant email to send.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, what's so fascinating to me is I've looked at some people calling what they do agents, and I'm like, no, that's just a fancy if this then that
Yes,
statement, right?
exactly.
But I do think I was talking to Joe, the CEO of Crew AI, the other day, and his definition I liked, which is like there's an autonomy line, like where you
Yeah.
basically are giving the agents the ability to say, here's the general task I'm sending you to do, but you have freedom, degrees of freedom in terms of how you execute that task. So I think it's kind of interesting to see how all of this is going to shake out.
Yeah, they can do the first level of thinking and reasoning in a way to really set up a sales rep more for success than just if then.
Okay. What kind of technologies or products have you encountered recently that excite you the most?
I started, well, here's a use case of ChatGPT.
Mhm.
I used to have an executive coach who I really like and might go back to one day. It was just the
Mhm.
timing was not right for right now. While I'm not using him, I started using ChatGPT essentially as an executive coach. And it just knows me well by all the crazy things I ask it throughout these days. And so when I'm trying to make decisions on a people related thing or want someone to bounce an idea off of the product roadmap, I've been going deep, like crazy conversations with ChatGPT. And also, there's also voice elements of being able to now chat with different tools. My husband is always walking around the house talking to his AI. I haven't done that yet, but maybe that's next for me.
Yeah, I forget. Like it's one of those things. I'll start typing something in a chat, and I use Perplexity mostly, but I go back and forth, and I'll be typing something, and about halfway through a 3 sentence prompt, I'm like, why didn't I just do voice for this?
Yeah,
But yeah,
exactly. It is crazy how much voice is coming up now, especially in sales world. Sellers love voice.
yeah. What is something you're passionate about that might surprise people?
Honestly, I just work on Pocus and I watch reality TV.
All right, well there you go. Reality TV. So what's your favorite show? What are some
Oh,
or
I
some?
watch it all. Name one
Oh,
and I
okay.
watch it. The Traders recently, fabulous. You haven't seen
I
that?
think I have not. I have not.
Wow, highly
I'm
recommend.
I have close friends that do not miss an episode of Survivor. Tell me all about it. They actually sent
Mm,
me a clip recently, which was about a woman who had some learning challenges and was in a challenge. It was this very touching clip of kind of somebody coming cross teams and kind of giving her support. And I thought that was very very human and
yeah.
love that piece. But I am somebody who gets lost like driving out of my driveway. So like I would fail miserably on like the great, what is it, the Amazing
All
Race
the
or sort of
shows. Oh
I
yeah,
would
I don't want to
I'd be out.
do it. I just want to watch it.
Yeah, I'd be out in the first round for sure, for sure. What's one thing you can't live without rather in your daily routine?
My coffee.
There you go. Yeah, yeah, same. Yeah.
Too many
Uh,
cups a day. Honestly, best investment I ever made was in a nice coffee machine. You can have so many good branding moments with your company name.
Oh,
And
we're having a lot of fun.
yeah,
Trust me.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I was bored one day, so we actually have a coffee shop on the coffee website pre-launch. So you can order swag already for coffee, and
that's
we have
unreal.
coffee. Coffee is for closers, hats, and mugs, and
Oh, I
t-shirts.
want one. That
Yeah,
is awesome.
I will send you one. I will send you one. And then finally, just like how can listeners keep in touch with you and help you on Pocus's mission?
Oh, I'm on LinkedIn a bunch, so feel free to DM me there or follow there. And yeah, happy to chat.
Fantastic. Alexa, I've loved chatting with you. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us,
Yeah, thank you.
and hope you have a great week.
You too.
All right.
Thanks, Doug.